is important, and we want to get the word out. I just got back from spending last week up in D.C., including a full day with General Welsh, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, talked to us about all the wing commanders, summoned all the wing commanders from across the entire Air Force, and to talk about a lot of stuff that's going on, to include this, a whole day dedicated to sexual assault and all of that stuff. The force shaping programs is part of this. There were a number of issues that we're going to be getting some more information out, and he just wanted to get a chance to get a feel from all of us and what we're seeing from out in the field. One of the things that I wanted us to lead in and let you all know that we don't have all the answers on this stuff just yet. And the Air Force doesn't have all the answers on all this, but we do know that with sequestration and with all the budget cuts and the drills, they're running multiple versions of the budget, the POM, for those of you familiar with the term. There are all kinds of different versions for the FY14, FY15, and beyond. And until we get some relief from Congress on some of the budget, and we're going to get a little bit, but until we get some relief, there are going to have to be cuts that are going to take place. It was very compelling to me when I saw the numbers, and they put up and they're trying to explain, as we all have some of these same questions as to why and how we get into some of this stuff. Why don't we just? And there's a lot of things that come to mind. Comes to my mind, people who are other wing commanders who are in the audience. There was a lot of you, I'm sure, have the why don't we just? There's the American public that says, why don't you just? Everybody's got good ideas on this, and they're looking at all of them. What I will tell you is when you take a look at the budget, over 50% of it in the budget is stuff that you can't even touch. It's either by law, it's money that goes and allocated to certain things that you cannot cut, or other outs, from the Air Force because it's supporting other agencies, or they're in programs or certain things that are must-pay bills that you cannot cut. We talk about achieving efficiencies, like in energy and a lot of, even if you were to achieve a 20% efficiency in energy across every Air Force installation, everywhere, total 20%, that gets you to a decimal point on the amount that we have to cut in the budget. Okay, that's scary, right? You think, everybody thinks, hey, we could be more efficient. The reality is, the numbers we're talking about gets us to a decimal point in those areas. So then you start getting into, really it's readiness and modernization are the two areas that the money has to come out of. And then the question comes down to, is it the force that we have today that we're going to fund at the expense of tomorrow? Or is it tomorrow and then we're not doing as well today? Well, we all know there's a balance in there somewhere, and that's what people a lot smarter than me, and they've got a lot of people working on this, are doing right now, and it's harder. So part of this, and if you look at the costs for the Department of Defense, personnel costs are a huge and enduring part of that, okay? Because if you think about all your retirements, all your health care benefits, and all the stuff that comes with supporting personnel is a huge chunk and ever-growing piece of the budget. So it's something that has to be looked at. It has to be, we have to look at the entire strategy. Because what are we going to do? We got to stop doing some things, right? We can't continue on like we're doing. So while they're looking at mission sets, while they're looking at airframes, and oh, by the way, I use it as an example on this one too, what we're talking about, the budget with regard to, we talked about cutting entire weapon systems, the KC-10, right? Many of you have heard about that, or talking about KC-10s or A-10s, cutting them out entirely, the entire fleet. And like, why would we do that? Well, because that's the only way to achieve, with some reasonable amount of risk associated with it, to get the numbers that we're talking about, the sizable. Because if you did an equivalent number of KC-135s, an older airplane, to achieve that same savings, you'd have to do hundreds of them. And then you don't have enough tails in the air, or booms, to provide receivers the amount of gas savings. So you can't do the mission. Same thing with the A-10. You can get rid of the entire A-10. To do the equivalent number of F-16s, you have to use a number that is untenable, that you can't execute the mission then. So you have to look at that. Air Force is making some really tough decisions on some of this. Personnel is going to be one of those. General Welsh is very committed to trying, he understands this, we've been through this before. We've had much bigger number cuts before in the Air Force. But this is actually the largest percentage cut that we're going to experience, that we've been experiencing in the Air Force, just based on the way the numbers are. It is what it is. We're just getting leaner. We're very sensitive to that. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. They're trying to do it as painlessly as possible, and they're very committed to giving you the lead time to make informed decisions and to plan. And that's why all these messages, the PISDMs as they're called, we're trying to get everybody notified what programs you're eligible for before Christmas. So the target date's by the 23rd. They're working fast and furious, and they keep rolling them out, and as soon as they're ready, they're pushing out the information on this. So that way you know. And then with a 6-month lead time as the target, minus a couple programs that you know you're already in the eligibility window for, with at least 6 months of advance notice so you can plan and think about this and prepare. So they're very committed to trying. It's very hard, but at least trying to offer you that opportunity to make informed decisions and prepare. That's why we're giving this meeting today. And we're going to do another session on Friday for those who couldn't be here if you want to come back and listen again. They're going to give you the overview of all these programs. We do not have all the particulars yet, but it's very important. I want to make sure that General Welsh wants to get this out. I want to get this out. We owe it to you to inform you so you can start thinking about this. This is about your lives, your families. So as you take this information in today, okay, you're going to have a lot of questions. Fine, copy those down. We're going to be getting folks out in your units that are going to be trained up and understand these programs to help assist. There's going to be the FSS is going to have folks dedicated to helping you with answer these questions. The Air Force Personnel Center, through call centers and through MyPERS and through webs and all the stuff they're going to tell you about is there to help answer these questions. As soon as we get the information, we're going to put it out there. We're not playing I've got a secret on this. I'm committed to getting, if we get the information, we're going to get you the information. It's going to be available because I want you to make informed decisions. As a personal plea for me, I ask you, please make sure you talk to your spouses and your family about this. When you're making these decisions, make informed and family decisions on this. Okay? Share this information and talk about this so you can plan for the future. There's a lot of voluntary programs. There's some involuntary programs. And what I will just put up there up front is the question that Chief Master Sergeant Air Force Cody has said, has answered before, is there room in the Air Force for me in the future? The answer is yes. As you can see, as we're tightening the belt, it's just more and more, the bar is just set higher, and it just gets back to that performance base. The people who are performing and doing a good job and excelling are the ones who clear the bar, who are going to retain, and they're going to have that opportunity. It's still about a performance-based system. It's not a longevity system. It is a performance-based system. And it just makes the organization better. We can become more efficient that way. So there is room for you in the Air Force. You just have to continue to perform, and perform to the levels that you're doing. We have some excellent and very top-performing people right here at Scott Air Force Base. Very proud of you. If you keep doing that, there is room for you in the Air Force. There are opportunities here, and then for those of you who maybe aren't, maybe there's something you need to look at. There's to look at other options. This is what we're going to present to you today. We'll have some more follow-on meetings. We'll do some as we get them again after the first of the year, because you'll see there's some FaceTime. But I don't want to take any more time from them to roll this out. We'll take some questions at the end. We're not going to be able to address them all. I just up front ask when you're asking questions in the broader forum, please ask questions that are applicable to the broader population and save those that are more targeted to your unique situation to afterwards. We'll stick around afterwards, and we'll have folks to be able to address those. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Calloway to continue.
Thank you, Colonel Kramer. Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Russ Calloway, your Force Support Squadron Commander, and today I've been asked to brief you on numerous force management programs that the Secretary of the Air Force recently approved. Again, before we start, we highly encourage questions at the end of the briefing. However, if it is a question specific to your particular situation, we ask that you hold it until after the briefing, and we'll be available to discuss your question with you. The Chief of Staff has said that many times the Air Force will get smaller. In the next 5 years, the Air Force could reduce up to 550 aircraft from its inventory and reduce the force by approximately 25,000 airmen. The Air Force must start to implement programs that reduce the size of our force now. Changing global missions, national security concerns, and ongoing budget uncertainty are driving the Air Force to become a leaner future force. The intent of this brief is to inform you of the force management programs the Air Force is about to execute. As FY14 congressional direction becomes more definitive, the Air Force will adjust force management plans accordingly and keep every airman fully informed. The Air Force is making this announcement now to give airmen and their families time to make plans for their future. Next slide. As many of you may know already, the Air Force continues to retain high-quality airmen at significant rates. The result is that many specialties and grades will grow out of bounds by the end of the fiscal year. It sounds strange, but high retention is a challenge the Air Force has been addressing since 2009. Now the Air Force needs to start shaping the force to be smaller. The goal of this town hall is to provide you with information on the programs the Secretary of the Air Force approved to make the necessary force reductions. As the Air Force becomes smaller, it is even more important that we retain high-performing airmen. Therefore, job performance is and will continue to be our first priority. As we describe each program, I encourage you to consider your own personal and professional goals, get a realistic assessment of your performance compared to your peers, and determine the best course of action for you and your family. I will say that as we move forward, job performance will still be the main factor in how you can impact your Air Force career. Big important point is the banner in the bottom of the slide. Unless specifically noted, if you aren't in an AFC that projects an overage in your grade, you are not eligible for voluntary programs or vulnerable for involuntary boards. And if we get enough volunteers to eliminate the overage, the Air Force will reevaluate the need for an involuntary board for that AFSC and grade. I would now like to introduce Captain Moore, who will be speaking to the officer programs.
Here we have the 10 current force management programs for FY14. The first 6 were actually implemented by the Secretary of the Air Force earlier this year. We won't go into too much detail on those because there are PSDMs out there that you go onto MyPers, download them. We encourage you to do that. Read through them in their entirety. If you have any questions, you can come and see us. There may be some changes with those programs on the horizon, but by and large, they will continue running as they already are. The bottom 4 are actually the new ones that just rolled out this month. Some of them you may have seen in the past, the VSP, Force Shaping Board, and the RIP. The newest one to all of us is the eCert, which we'll talk about later on. We encourage you, those who have gone through Force Shaping Boards or RIP boards, to get with your younger officers and prepare them for what's to come, to make sure they know what to expect, what's going to be involved in this process. Slide. Talk about the voluntary programs. The first one is the limited active duty service commitment and time and grade waivers. This allows eligible personnel to request a waiver no later than 1 July of 14, and those who retire no later than 1 September 14, or separate no later than 30 September 14. Some of the service commitments that are waiverable are the PCS, tuition assistance, SDE, and technical training, USAPA, OTS, and ROTC commitments, and then post-11 BI bill for dependents. Of note here, any unearned portions or bonuses will be recouped. So if you've used tuition assistance and you haven't paid back that with your commitment, the Air Force will recoup that money. If you've had your dependent go to school and they're going to school now on your GI Bill and you separate voluntarily, the Air Force will recoup that money. For the expanded pilot skills, most of you know that facilitates the transfer from active duty to the Air Reserve component. Right now that commitment is 1-for-1, so 1 year of commitment will equal 1 year in the Air Reserve component. And you must separate no later than 30 September of 14. Slide. The TERA, the Temporary Early Retirement Authority, offers officers with at least 15, no more than 20 years of total active federal military service to retire. Again, that would be at a reduced amount of retirement pay. It actually already had one TERA earlier this year, but they're foreseeing officers being able to apply for that next year as well. For the 8 versus 10 year total active federal commissioned service date retirement, officers may request to retire with at least 20 years of total active federal military service. and a minimum of 8 years of commissioned service instead of the original 10 years. For the voluntary separation pay, this is a new one that just rolled out this month. It applies to RIF eligible officers. So if you are going to be on the RIF board, you can apply for VSP. It doesn't mean you're going to get offered VSP, but you can apply for it on a case-by-case basis, and AFPC will approve that. Again, you may apply for VSP in lieu of meeting the RIF board. Slide. For the involuntary programs, the RIF board, again, this is new, but it hasn't been used in the past. It's not new to some of you, but it is new for this month. Targets 04s and below with at least 6 but less than 18 years of commissioned service, and you must have served at least 1 year in your current grade as of 31 January 15, which is the expected separation date. You must not be on the promotion list, and you're not eligible to retire or will be eligible to retire in the next 2 years. The Air Force can select up to 30% of RIF eligible officers to retire or to separate. For the Force Shaping Board, officers are eligible with at least 3 years, but less than 6 years of total active commissioned service. If you are selected for force shaping, you will not be entitled to separation pay unless you have 6 or more years of military service or you're eligible for the Terra program. Slide. Here's the one that's new to all of us, the ESERB. Targets 06s with 2 to 4 years time and grade. 05s non-selected for promotion to 06 one time, and retirement eligible captains and majors. The difference between the ESERB and the SERB, if you go through that program and you're retained, you don't have to go up for another SERB for 5 years. For this one, if you're eligible every year, you'll be enlisted, or you'll be eligible for the ESERB. So until you're not eligible anymore, every year you can be in this program. And again, like the RIF board, the Air Force can select up to 30% of officers to retire early. Slide. The SERB actually met this month, a couple days ago, and the FPC does not foresee the SERB being used again for this fiscal year. With that, that's all the officer programs that are out. I'm going to turn it over to Senior Master Sergeant Smith to discuss the enlistment side.
Hi, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Smith, the MPS Superintendent, and I'm going to brief the enlisted force management program. Slide, please. As you can see here, we have 10 enlisted force management programs listed. 5 of them are not new, 5 of them are. So we will go into those as we go through. The one thing to key in on is several of these, like the active duty service commitment, the time and grade waiver, Palace Chase, Terra, that's all similar on the officer side of the house and the enlisted side of the house. Those programs are run neck and neck as the voluntary programs. So slide, please. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on the active duty service commitment. The main thing to remember is that you can have an active duty service commitment or time and grade waiver entertained by AFPC to either retire or separate early. Expanded Palace Chase, again, is the same on the officer side, 1-for-1 to get out of the Air Force and go Palace Chase. Next slide, please. The Terra program, we do not have any new details on the Terra program. We are pending that information from AFPC. However, it's not a new program. The PSDM guides are out there. Please look at the one from FY13 if you're considering volunteering for the Terra program. Not that everything is going to stay the same, but it can at least give you some information on what is entailed in the Terra program and what your benefits and your rights will be. Voluntary separation pay is a new program for the enlisted side of the Air Force. Hasn't been enacted since like 1993 for the enlisted folks to voluntary separation pay. Airmen must have at least 6 years, but less than 20 years of total active federal military service to be eligible for this program. And you may apply for the VSP in lieu of meeting an enlisted retention board. So if you're notified you will meet an enlisted retention board, the VSP program is an option for you. Next slide, please. In ineligible program, or involuntary program for enlisted members is the DOS rollback. It is not a new program, however, there have been some changes this go-round. The DOS rollback used to consider everybody with a quality force indicator, and now it's only looking at those who have declined retainability for a PCS and who have a separation date of 31 May of 2015 or earlier. So if your current date of separation is 31 May 2015 or earlier and you decline retainability to PCS, you will be considered under this program. Another new aspect of this program is that commanders will not have the opportunity to retain anybody who is determined eligible for the DOS rollback program. In the past, commanders can make that determination. With this new DOS rollback program, they cannot. We expect the list from AFPC on this today. However, we have not received it yet. They will send us it. We are required to go into the system and manually confirm everybody on the list before we can get the list out to commanders. Our date to have it to the commanders is not later than 19 December. So we will diligently work that as soon as we receive the information. Next slide, please. Quality Force Review Program. This is also a new program for the enlisted force. It is not based on your AFSC. It is going to consider senior master sergeants and below. The only people who are sanctioned will be those with equal to 18 years but less than 20. So if you have quality force indicators but you have 18 years but less than 20, you will not be considered on this program. All others will be considered. Quality force indicators are reporting identifiers, re-enlistment eligibility codes, assignment availability codes, and grade status briefing codes. So if you don't know if you fall into that category, check your records. If you can't figure it out, contact us. We will help you figure out if you fall into one of those categories or one of those quality force indicators. Airmen not retained with 6+ years but less than 15 will receive separation pay. If you have at least 15 years in the Air Force but less than 20, you can apply for TERA. If you have more than 20, you can apply for retirement instead of meeting the Quality Force Indicator Review Board. Next slide, please. Enlisted involuntary programs continued. We're talking the Enlisted Retention Board. This is also new. Reviews records of airmen and overage AFSCs and grades to determine who will be retained. Voluntary separation pay will be offered if you have 6 or more years. Airmen not retained can also apply for TERA, and if you have 20 or more years, apply for retirement. Again, this is an AFSC-based program. If there are overages in your AFSC and grade, you will be considered under this Enlisted Retention Board program. Next slide, please. Chief Master Sergeant Retention Program. This is also new. We've received a PSDM on this, so the PSDM is available on my purse for further review. This is a voluntary and involuntary phase. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. Phase 1, of course, is effective immediately through 15 March of 2014. Looking for chiefs to voluntarily retire no later than 1 January of 15. Chief Master Sergeants who are not eligible to volunteer are those under investigation, under appellate review, pending actions under a disability evaluation system, notified of selection for a 365-day deployment, and electing the 3-day option, or tasked for a 365 deployment, an AEF deployment, or a TDY for training in preparation for a 365-day deployment. Chief Master Sergeants under investigation, under assignment consideration who have elected the 7-day op, and those already projected for retirement. Next slide, please. If phase 1 does not get enough Chief Master Sergeants to volunteer to retire from the Air Force, the Air Force will enter phase 2. The involuntary phase will have a board that will convene at AFPC from 10 through 13 June of 2004. The retention board will be comprised of 3 general officers, the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, and 4 MAJCOM or COCOM command chiefs. Chief Master Sergeants will meet the board provided they meet meet the following criteria. They are retirement eligible, they are serving in an AFSC listed on the next slide, and they have 1 year time and grade as of this past 1 December 2013. Chiefs and senior raters will be notified not later than 18 April via an email direct from AFPC if they are going to be eligible for the involuntary phase of this program. Senior raters may provide a 5-line narrative to justify why the Air Force should retain this Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. So if you have a Chief Master Sergeant you're wanting to retain, a 5-line narrative, AFPC recommends that you not use EPR bullets because the EPRs are going to be available for the board. So it is a 5-line narrative in your opinion of why the member should be retained. Next slide. I know y'all ain't gonna be able to see this very well, but there are 45 AFSCs listed on this slide for Chief Retention Board program. Again, like I said, the PSDM is available out on the MyPERS website. And of course, these are subject to change if there are the overages and eligibles based on when requirements are met. So if we get enough volunteer chiefs to separate, the requirements of how many are going to separate are going to change, or retire early and are going to change. So next slide. This is just a snapshot of a timeline of the boards. And again, now through 14 March is when they want you to volunteer to retire. Applications will be approved by 4 April with a retirement date of 1 January 2015. Chief Master Sergeants and Senior Raters who are going to be considered on the involuntary portion will be notified by 18 April. Narratives will be due by 16 May. The board will convene 10 through 13 June. The involuntary selection notice will be received on 25 June with a retirement date effective, or new date of separation, of course, effective 31 October with a date of retirement effective 1 November. And I will now turn it back over to Lieutenant Colonel Calloway to brief the next portion of the briefing. Thank you.
Go ahead, next slide. All right, this slide shows the flow of the force management programs. Of note, the programs show retirement and separation dates in both FY14 and FY15, depending on the program. As you can see, many of the programs will result in losses before the end of calendar year 14. Again, it is important for you to regularly check the MyPERS website for information on the program details, timing, and eligibility. The MyPERS website should be your primary source for current information, and it does contain an extensive question and answer page as well. Next slide. All right, so what does this mean to all of you? The Secretary of the Air Force made the decision to announce these force management programs now to allow you time to discuss options with your families and others so you can all make informed decisions. Some details on each program are available. However, the details for specific programs will be published and available on the MyPERS website as program specifics are announced and updated as the board dates draw near. But there are still things you can do to prepare yourself for these future programs. First, we encourage you to speak to your family about potential changes to your status. Also, we highly recommend talking to your Force Support Squadron, mentors, supervisors, and commanders on these programs to get a realistic assessment of your performance relative to your peers. Every airman identified as eligible for a force management program, voluntary or involuntary, will be individually notified. If and when you are notified that you are eligible, you are strongly encouraged to contact your Airmen and Family Readiness Center and talk to the Transition Assistance Program, TAP, representatives. TAP is a mandatory requirement mandated by federal law to aid airmen in making a successful transition to civilian life and make informed decisions about their future. Therefore, recommend you take advantage of resources available to you and consider registering for TAP early, rather than waiting for retirement or separation decisions. Lastly, review your records online through the Personnel Records Display application, PRADA, and work with the Military Personnel Section to correct any errors. We in the Force Support Squadron, along with your commanders, are committed to giving you the best information and counsel we can. Next slide. Okay, here's some important contact numbers for the Military Personnel Section and Airmen and Family Readiness Center. I'll go ahead and turn the briefing over to Colonel Kramer, who has a few more comments to make.
Okay. It's a lot of information. I think it's kind of scary stuff too. You're like going, okay, how's this apply to me? And like, oh my God. All the wing commanders, we got this brief, not the detailed version, we got the kind of the executive version of the brief last week, and it's like, wow. A lot of stuff out there. The keys in some of these things for some of you, remember this is targeted at certain AFSCs and your groups. So they're trying to be very specific and not just blanket, but they're trying to manage to help make sure we're maintaining the right folks and the right, right level of people across the career field, so we don't go decimating one and we're out of, pick your career field, airfield, air traffic controllers or whatever, pick an AFSC. So we're trying to be very deliberate in this. So some of you may not be eligible for some of these programs because they're target AFSCs. They're going to get that information out to you. one thing out of this is like, well, again, it's very scary, it's very overwhelming when you start looking. We have, as an Air Force, have been through this before. And those of us who, and colonels, chiefs, senior master sergeants, like out there, you've been through, you've seen this, and yet here we are today, right? We're still the premier Air Force of the world. We still are executing the mission, we're still able to do that. Right? We will continue to do that. We will continue to take care of airmen and families as we go through this. Right? So I don't want this to be a case where everybody is like, whoa, I need to get off the ship. Okay? If that's the right thing for you, then that's the right thing for you. It's why there's voluntary programs in this. But don't get into the panic on this, okay? So please make some deliberate decision making on this. Take the information. You're gonna go through the whole steps of shock and awe, and then you're going, oh my gosh, and then you're gonna get through some of this process and get into the facts, okay? Talk to the people in ANFRC, talk to the people in FSS. Get on the MyPERS website, ask questions, find out what's right for you. Because I tell you personally, I want to retain so many of you, and we need to retain good, hardworking people to lead this Air Force in the same very mission that you all signed up for and volunteered for in the first place. That service before self piece is still there. We still are the defenders of our nation in the era. We need good people doing that. Okay? We have to get smaller. There are fiscal realities out there, and we're trying to do it smartly. So it may be in your best interest in your family that you need to take advantage of some of these programs, and that's fine. It's why we're offering them. But I ask you, please just very carefully go through and take a look at this and make informed decisions. Those of you who heard me talking under forums, whether it's ALS, FTAC, and all the others, my advice to you and all this is make informed decisions and talk about it with your families. Okay? There is room in the Air Force for you in the future. But we are, compared to the other services, we like to think of ourselves, and we set a very high bar. We are a standard of excellence, right? And that's what we're going to continue to be, an excellent force here. We need people, top performing people, and there is room for you there. So ask the right questions. Don't get in a panic on us. You're going to go through the grief and the shock and all, I got it. Go through that. That's why you saw, if you can just go back to the one with the timeline with the bar chart. That one right there. Okay. I was talking about, they're very sensitive at trying to give you time to prepare for all these programs. The ones that were the red stars that show the separation dates, the ones that are closed are the ones that you already know about. But all this new stuff, they're trying to at least give you 6 months, right? Time to plan. Transition at the TAP program, transition assistance. ANFRC has some great programs to help you out. It's always a good idea, I think, to take those courses anyway, even if you're not looking to get off the train, because it's good to prepare and look for down the road. Even more so now, you need to be doing that. We're encouraging you to get to those classes early. This is obviously a shock to the system in capacity, right? We don't expect this many people all at once. So I just ask your patience as we are going through trying to figure out how we're going to robust that throughput and capacity to be able to provide you all this information so you can make those informed decisions and prepare if this is for you, or in the event that it comes to you, whether you want it or not. All right? But you can see we've got that time. So it is not going to happen tomorrow. It's not even going to happen next month. You need to be thinking about it, but it's not imminently happening to you. So don't panic. Think through this, make some informed decisions, ask questions. And we're here to do that. I'm going to turn the mic back over to them. Said if we could just take questions that would apply to the broader audience now, we'll take individual questions afterwards, and we're going to train folks in your units, your CSSs and other folks to help you on the local level. We have the FSS, we've got the MyPERS, we're doing everything we can to try to assuage your concerns and address your questions. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Kurt Kramer. All right, now we'll open up to questions. Just remember, I know it's an emotional topic, and we're simply the messengers, but officially in this matter, I have no opinion, so if you're going to ask me for an opinion, I can't give you an opinion. And I apologize up front, we don't have any specific answers on a lot of programs, but we'll get those to you as soon as we can. So at this point, we'll go ahead and open up for questions.
Lieutenant Colonel Maxwell from Headquarters AMCA 4. Just so I understand, with the exception of the DOS rollback and the QFRB, the Quality Force Review Board, all of the involuntary programs are going to be targeted by AFSC and year group overages, and that will be published by AFPC sometime before Christmas, correct?
Yes, sir. In fact, I used to run RIF and force shaping boards. I had the opportunity to do that down at AFPC. Not a good opportunity, but what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll typically put a matrix out there, and that will be by FSC and by grade. And as folks take advantage of the voluntary programs, they'll update that matrix so you can track where you're at with your FSC and your group or grade, and then they'll keep doing that. And some programs will drop off as they go along and take voluntary applications and get enough of those.
The enlisted briefing seems to move pretty quickly, so I apologize if I don't remember the exact name of the program that was listed. You said it was applicable to senior master sergeants and below, equal to or greater than 18 years of service and less than 20. But then on the lower portion of that slide, it was very confusing. It listed courses of action for people to take with over 6 years, less than 15, and less than 6 years.
Okay. Yeah,
The most interesting, yeah.
the 18 to 20 years you're in sanctuary, those are not eligible for the program. That's where the confusion is in the slide, and we'll slow down next time. But yes, that 18 to 20, so the bottom part is who is eligible. That 18-20 means you're in sanctuary and you are not going to be affected by that program.
Sir, raise your hand, thanks for coming in. Along that same line, if you're in sanctuary, does that mean you're not eligible to volunteer if it's the time's right for you to leave, or is it just you won't be forced out?
You can volunteer for the TARA. That just means you can't be involuntary separated or forced to retire.
Sure, Sergeant Anderson, Air Force. When you were talking about the voluntary separation thing, and you got into the details about going to the boards, it also mentioned something about getting the voluntary separation offer to go through the board. Is that just prior to the board, or did you notify the board, or once you cross the board and been selected?
So what happens is once you've been selected to be separated, to not be retained, you will get separation pay, but it will not be typically the same amount. So it's going to be more up front as voluntary separation pay. Once you meet the board and go through the RIF, force shaping board's not eligible, but the RIF or those type boards, then yes, you will get separation pay. If you're over 6 years, correct? 6+ years.
So Sergeant Thomas from 3rd MRS. As far as the retainability and everything goes for NCORP, I know there were about 1,000 airmen that had approved retrains, that they got their class days canceled because they, due to sequestration and funding for class days. How are those individuals going to be affected as far as these programs go, considering they were already due to be shaped into a curriculum?
Ma'am, those individuals were all granted a CJR in their career field. However, if their career field is overmanned in their AFSC and their grade, they could be considered on one of these enlisted retention boards if they're still overmanned in that career field.
Thank you.
If an individual is selected for one of the retention board, they have more than 15 years but less than 20. For the folks that are between 6 and 15, if they are selected to not be retained, they'll be offered at a lower DSP. However, will the people who are between 15 and 20 be offered fair if they are selected to not be retained?
Let me verify on that one. I don't want to make it up here. I don't want to guess. And we try to prepare for most of the questions, but
Airmen not retained with at least 15 years will be offered TARA on the involuntary program.
thank you. Yes, in the back.
Sir, Chief Honster at LRS. A quick question on the slide. It mentioned about waiting until you're eligible or you're notified that you're eligible to attend TAPS. I thought we're always eligible. Is there going to be more communication as far as that goes, or are we not always eligible?
You're always eligible. If you're within a couple years of retirement or separation, it's always recommended to take TAP. So you can go ahead and register now for TAP. That's not an issue. But again, it's going to be a large influx for our TAP program. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it work. But yes, once you are notified that you're eligible, highly recommended that you attend the TAP program.
Peter Nedro, A7S, on the enlisted program, it showed that if you're involuntary separated about 15 to 20 years, you were offered TARA, but on the officer programs on the RIF, would the same thing apply for officers above 15?
Got the slide real quick just to verify. I believe so, but let us verify real quick. I don't.
That's something that we have to dig into. Certainly
Yeah.
don't have much information on the RIP stuff.
Yeah, we don't have much information on the RIF stuff. Let me get back to you on that one. If you can't see me afterwards, we'll get your name and contact information. We'll get back to you on that one as well.
Yes, sir. Master Sergeant Mendez from TACC. I had a quick question. You're selected to retire under the board, and you're within the 6 to 18, and you either take the redux or you're in the high 3. Are they going to still balance out that commitment for the redux portion, or let it go? And the other part of it is for the high 3, if you're retired before you reach that high 3, are they going to calculate that way, or are they going to take the lower grade and the higher grade?
That's a question we actually anticipated. We don't have an answer to that one right now. I really don't. I mean, I knew that one was coming. That was when I was like, God, I hope they don't ask that question. But
Just real brief on that, like the Colonel said, we don't have any details on that, but if you look back at the foreshaping message from 13 on the Terra program, those who took the redux got a lower retirement amount than those who did not, who volunteered to retire early on the Terra program. Not saying that that's going to carry over into this cycle. We have not received the message yet, but last year on the FY13, those who did got the lower amount. They did not recoup the payment on CSB on the last board, but again, can't guarantee that any of that's going to happen. But just, for situational awareness, just take a look at that. That message is out there. I looked at it this morning just before I came over here because I knew a question would come up.
For the RIP, if they're eligible for TARA, they can accept it.
okay. So in the message for the RIF, for the earlier question, if you're eligible for TARA, if you're selected for the RIF, then you can accept that as well. You can apply for that.
Sergeant Locker from May 7th. With retirement in mind, and retirement not being automatic, it's an application. The member has to apply for retirement. I noticed that some of those notification dates are June, July for seniors and retirement eligible type people. I saw a hard date of April 14th. And that means maybe for chiefs. But is there a hard date for those members to make informed decisions once they're notified?
Not at this point in time. The only one that is for the chief board, because that's the only PSPM we have received.
Is that for April?
That is before April that their retirement will be approved by the AFPC. They have till 15 March to apply for retirement. By 4 April, they will be approved and press on. As far as the rest of them, until we actually get those messages and get the timeline. But you're keeping it on a good thing. I'll put strong with you is that if you are retirement eligible and you're electing any of these programs, or you're elected under the involuntary program to retire, you as the individual will have the obligation to go out and apply for retirement in virtual MBS. The Air Force is going to establish a data separation board. If you never go out and apply for retirement in virtual MBS, your data separation is going to come and go, and you're going to separate from the Air Force with no retirement entitlements. So that is a key indicator and a key thing to get across. If you actually go out and apply for retirement, that's the tracks. I can't stop that one enough.
And there was a key statement that in that PSP that you talked about what you need to put in your application.
Yes.
Talking about, under the rollback program or something like that.
Yes, under the enlisted retention board program, selected, it's all in there. At each PSPM gets released, it'll tell you what you put in there. So again, read those PSPMs, have that saved on your desktop, it applies to you, so that when it comes time to apply for that retirement, you know that you have to put that down. But we're also going to direct you.
All right. Well, Colonel Kramer, I don't know if I thought you had one more point to make.
I
So.
do. The one last thing, okay. For me, as the installation commander, a lot of questions. We have everybody from AMC, AFNIC, Transcom, the Wing, ISCAO, everybody. Okay, there's a lot of organizations on this base. Yet, I am the base separation authority. So all that stuff still funnels through me. So here's my request. As we've done in the commanders, your commander knows, please make sure when you're processing these through, because the way the system is set up in CMS and all when it comes to me, It comes direct, and it does not electronically go through your chain of command. I ask you to make sure that you inform your chain of command that it's gone through that process, and ask your supervisor, put in the system that says, Mike, Colonel Haas has been, is aware of this, or whoever. So that way I know that your chain of command is aware of what's going on, because I will tell you, as the leadership, our concerns now is we're trying, we have some consternation as well, as you might imagine. Who's leaving? What is it going to do to my organization? Where are the holes going to be in my organization as far as manpower? Because this is an Air Force-wide look at personnel. It is not, they're not choosing based on at Scott Air Force Base how many people within this AFSC in your group. They're looking at it from across the Air Force. So there may be some installations out there that get hit harder than others in certain areas. It is important for us as the leadership to know who we are have leaving or want to leave, so we can look at our manning and start planning ahead. Okay? So I just ask that you continue to make sure you keep your leadership chain informed on that. And because of the volume that we expect, a lot more than what I'm most used to seeing, okay, we are working processes to expeditiously process that through that. So I offer you my commitment that we will work to expeditiously process your paperwork and your applications for these programs. But I just ask your patience for me and realize that there is a volume issue here on top of the day job and everything else that we have going on as well, that I will continue to process. If you're not getting the response, if you feel like it's been lost, ask. Okay? We are trying to set up a fail-safe system to make sure this goes through. I don't want anybody held up. Okay? But I just ask your patience with me, as I've got to process everybody on this installation's paperwork. They come through me. So I just ask your patience on that, and to keep your leadership chain informed so that they can make some informed decisions on manpower and filling the mission in your organizations as well. That's my last slide. So thank you very much for your patience, and for those standing in the back. I know there's a lot of information that we pushed out here. It's generated a lot of questions. The team's going to stay here afterwards. We'll be happy to address any additional questions you have. We have another session on Friday. We'll get to those people who weren't able to come today, or if you come back and want to hear it again. We're going to publish the slides, get the information put out there, and we give you our word that as soon as we get the PSTMs and get the additional information, as it flows out to us, we're going to turn it right up to you so you have that information. Thank you for coming, and we'll be happy to take your questions. Everybody have a great day.